Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt. The Sounders rule the region. Seattle Sounders is campeón. It's gone! It's gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take the Open Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. We're doing a little special episode here to preview the Tacoma Defiance Open Cup game against the Oakland Roots, who are a USL Championship team. And helping me preview that game is one of my favorite guests, one of our regular guests on the show, Wade Weber, who is now the Director of Development for the Sounders, which sort of oversees the entire developmental system, right? Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, everything under the Sounders, I have a hand in. Primarily staff things, so not as much on the field working with players, although I still have a soft spot for central defenders that need some guidance. I do get called upon occasionally to sit in a meeting where we talk to Stuart Hawkins, Gallatin Sandness, who's coming on pretty well, Leo Burney. So fringe first team center backs. Well,
those are three players who might feature in this Oakland Roots match. I guess broadly speaking, though, this is probably an ideal scenario, right, for Tacoma Defiance to get to test themselves against a Spokane Velocity, who is a professional League One team who is theoretically at the same tier, and then to host a USL Championship team who is a little bit more it's a real step up, and this is sort of a little bit more along the lines of what the Tacoma Defiance were having to do every week a few years ago. But I mean, how important is a game like this for them?
Yeah, I don't think it can be underrated. And there's a couple things. The first is MLS Next Pro has a 28-game season. So the competitive calendar is 6 games shorter than the first team. So, we want opportunities for all of our players to play in meaningful matches as long as they can. So the Open Cup run has added at least 3 games to that total. So that brings us to 31, which is already more than we've played in any single Defiance season in MLS Next Pro.
Even including playoffs.
Correct, because we've only ever had double, 2 playoff games. We've win 1, lose a second. We've done that for 3 years. So we've gotten to 30 games, but now we're guaranteed 31. And if we get to playoffs, we could be talking a comparable season in terms of number of competitive matches to the first team. So that's one of them. But the quality of the match is a different thing. MLS Next Pro the teams are very different home and away based on if the first team's going to get involved. So when Defiance travel, you might be facing a team with 7 first-team guys because their schedules just work out that way. That's never the case when you play the USL. In the USL, that's the first team. And so back, the last season we spent in the USL Championship was 2021.
And you were the coach.
I was the coach. And those games were far and away the most difficult ones. We would much rather play them at home, which is where we get Oakland next week. But it is a different animal. Again, traveling on the road. I would rather the game have been on the road. I don't know the vagaries of the selection process. But
I'm sure there's a special place in your heart. Like for me, it would have been very special to see you guys play at Oakland Coliseum, or someplace I have attended many events in my life, and I would have loved to have seen you guys playing there. But alas,
I'm telling you,
in
that 21 season, we played Oakland, and they had two different facilities. One was a college field,
Laney College, probably
might have been. The other was it was a temporary turf field. I've never seen such a thing. Velcroed in 5-yard wide, 70-yard long strips, two different colors, like a dark green and a light green. And it was Velcroed. It was Velcroed to the ground. You could peel it up from the side.
I don't think I ever heard about this.
It was a disaster. The ball didn't roll properly. It was really, really it was a surreal experience. But I'm talking Phoenix Rising had dollar beer nights.
Right.
Sacramento Republic had the Tower Bridge Brigade behind one of the goals, kind of a Signal Iduna Park on miniature scale, but they almost always full because they're super cheap. They had their drummers, smoke bombs,
water slides in the background.
Exactly, at the state fair.
Exactly.
Right? There just was and there's a feeling, even when we played at Cheney, a feeling of something slightly dangerous, just a little bit. It's not sanitized, it's not safe. Yes, things could go sideways. I go back to Dempsey's red card wedding as a moment where, like, we almost went 80s England. I felt the crowd, like, as another red card comes and the police are coming in.
Oh, that was
the bridge.
Oh man,
it was surreal. I was fearful for the refs. I'm not saying I was happy about it. I'm just saying it felt, man, there's something. This doesn't feel safe.
We're gonna have to revisit this. We're coming on. This is the 10th anniversary of the red card wedding. We might have to do a revisiting of. We did an oral history of the red card wedding a few years ago, many years ago at this point, but it might be fun to revisit it now with even more air under it, because it has taken on this sort of mythical quality. Yeah. But now we've digressed.
No, the point being, playing a USL Championship team will be physically and technically a challenge for our players, but it's a winnable game, and Oakland will know that. Oakland is not going to be like coming in here thinking, these guys are terrible, they have no chance.
Professional team, right?
Yeah, and they know it could be supplemented by some first team guys who, whether or not that actually is the case, could tip the scales.
Right.
I don't know how many, because the first team are on we have meetings every week. Full disclosure, every Tuesday we talk about the upcoming 2 to 3 week window. Who's available to play in the second team? What should we be doing? And I bring that up because in the past, that didn't happen. So you would get Lamar Nagel dropped in 2019, 2018, like those years. He wasn't getting games for a couple weeks. Just have him play with the second team. That's not the function of the second team. It's not just to keep a veteran sharp. It should be a development opportunity for a young guy, whether he's on the first team or the second team. It might be different than coming back from a long-term injury.
Right, but you're not randomly dropping.
No. Nico
Kim Keehee is not playing at.
He's although
maybe
is an interesting. It's an interesting question, because as a center back, where's he going to get a game? Where unless you have midweek games, and the first team right now have this Saturday. And
could we see Kim Keehee play on Tuesday?
He would be eligible to play
because he's on the supplemental roster,
right? Correct. He's not ruled out by anything.
Okay. Well, now we're talking. Yeah. Now we're cooking.
I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm saying we have discussed all possibilities with that supplemental roster for that game, because if we win, it's game 32 for Defiance. We've added another, and that might even be on the road at
an MLS team, right?
Portland. And if our second team beats the Timbers' first team,
oh my God,
in a competitive match, I might retire. I might retire.
Yeah, in case people don't know, Wade is as much of a Seattle Sounder as basically any person could be. You are a a Federal Way native. You came up at an age where there was no real Sounders. I guess when you were first young, but then you did play for the USL Sounders or the A-League Sounders, I guess, right?
It was the A-League 94, 5, 6, yeah. But I went to the Sounders in the NASL. I went to games
there you go. Okay.
74.
I wasn't sure you were old enough to have gone to NASL games.
My first season as a soccer player was 73. I was 6. I was born in 67, Jeremiah.
You're
taking years off me.
Yeah, okay. I apologize. You were old enough to.
It would be amazing if we got through to the next round and played an MLS team, especially on the road. If we got them at home, the vagaries of Starfire and just the peculiar. Yeah. It's got an aura to it.
It sure does.
It's mythic status for Sounder fans, and we would love there to be a big crowd. And if we played an MLS team, there would be a.
Yeah. Well, I would hope that there's a good crowd for this Oakland Roots game. I know that one of the challenges for Defiance, especially since they've moved back to Starfire, is that there's just not crowds there for the most part. And my hope is that the farther that you guys can get into this tournament, the more interest there might be in fans being out there. And this seems like a good opportunity to do it. So we talked about Kim. Are there any other first team players that you think are maybe in contention for Stu Hawkins? I would imagine is a player that would be.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the last game, the ones that were involved in that, the ones who are not getting regular minutes with the first team are effectively eligible to play for us.
Right. So Travion, Cody Baker.
Stu, Cody, Kalani would be, but he's kind of moved himself into a more regular rotational spot with the first team. Interestingly, I think Rothrock is eligible for us.
Yeah,
I don't think Georgie is.
Right.
And so that even though Paul's a little older and has scored more goals at the MLS level, his salary does not yet reflect that reality. So, there is one team at the club, and that is the first team. That is the only team where the result truly matters. And I know I say this to the academy. I say this to parents in the academy, and it's a foreign idea for someone coming from the youth environment. Well, what do you mean? There's just individuals under the first team. That's all it is. And some of them will come up and some will get exited, and it's just this ongoing series of individuals. And then once you sign for the first team, it feels like you're now part of a team. But until you break into that rotation, the regular cycle of rosters, whether you're starting or coming off the bench, you're still just an individual, and you need that plan needs to be figured out for you. We have to manufacture opportunities for you. Danny Leyva is probably never going to play for the second team again, right? When Josh Atencio has left the club, they were fighting each other for minutes. Mm-hmm. Well, Danny's got to sink or swim on first team performances, and he wants that.
Yeah.
I know he wants that. No one wants to be in that sort of, well, you'll get minutes with the second team. You want to let me fight for a spot at Lumen. And so using this as an opportunity for those individuals on the first team that still have to break into that cycle, break into the cycle of making rosters, which again, you look at recent ones like Kalani, drafted last year, signed to the second team. That whole path has been positive. Whereas Travion, drafted or signed several years ago, has yet to get that opportunity with the first team to be on meaningful numbers of benches or get any opportunities on the field. They're both edge players in theory, but one is tracking just a little differently.
So, I guess this is a good introduction into Stu Hawkins' situation, who is a player who seems like he's sort of proven what he can prove at Tacoma Defiance, but is not broken into the first team yet. This seems like a pretty good opportunity for him specifically. I guess where does a player like that in your mind? How does he fit into the sort of this whole ethos?
Yeah, he's an excellent one to talk about because he's fancied by the national team, his age.
Played in the U18 with the win the World Cup with the Youth World Cup, whatever which one it was.
17s.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, and that was a year ago, 2 years ago, whenever that was. Stu will have the frame, and so he is almost like the test case for our new head of pro player development, Craig Dalrymple, who would be great for you to talk to at some point. He's
absolutely
erudite, English Canadian, born in England, raised in England, came to Simon Fraser to play soccer in BC, stayed, married a local girl, came up through the Whitecaps. Long story, but he has the responsibility for creating like living IDPs. The individual development plan is a funny acronym in the soccer development world because every club has them and very few clubs use them. So you create them and these are where you're strong, this is what you have to work on, and then, good luck. You basically give it to the guy. We don't do that anymore. We do it for the bulk of our players. We have that kind of standard, and if it's going to be a little harder, we don't have unlimited staff. So we're going to allocate our time and our resources at the players we think are capable of breaking through and making a jump to the pro game. So Craig is going to sit down and do video with them. And Stuart, one of the aspects of the IDP is a very clear physical development plan. Stu was rail thin. He was... what's the character from Nightmare Before Christmas?
Jack
Skellington.
Jack's
Sculling.
Jack Skellington.
Yeah,
right?
Bones.
Okay.
Bones. Well, all of last year was spent basically in the gym and at the training table, or the diet. We gave Stu a lot of food, and he pushed a lot of weight. And he also played nearly 3,000 minutes at a pro level. But we weren't concerned about the minutes part because he's technically good enough. But,
one of the best passers
he is.
in NMLS Next Pro last year based on all the data.
He has the technical ability, but wasn't strong enough, probably wasn't good enough in the air. And some of that had to do with power, to be able to boss a guy and own your position, to jump over somebody. And so we just committed a full year to, almost like the old red shirt year in college football. You're just going to feed the guy beef and have him lift weights. And at the end of the year, you're going to have someone who at least is more capable of, shoving people around a football field. But I think it's clear to us there's been a benefit for Stu. He is physically more capable, covers ground faster, still has the technical competency. For me, the fascinating question for Stu is, where is the breakthrough in the first team? Where does it happen? And oftentimes, things like that come from an injury. Obed played a ton because Jean-Paul tore his ACL. I'm not saying that. We certainly don't want any more injuries, right? But barring an injury, how often do you change a center back? It's another thing.
Especially when the center backs are Ymar and Jackson Reagan, who are both Defender of the Year candidads.
And Nuhu. If he's the third,
right? Who's playing for Cameroon in World Cups.
Plays against Mo Salah and qualifying.
Right.
Like all of it. You look at Stu and you say, okay, well, there has to be a plan. And so there have been significant discussions about what is his next option. There's two types of loans. One is kind of a loan for sale. We're not interested in him anymore. Put him in the shop window with you. If you like him, there's a purchase price. The other is a loan for development, and that is what we might be able to work with Stuart. It's not certain, and maybe he does get a chance. The first team decide. Schmetz said he was close. He is knocking on the door of, if there's an extended spell of bad performances, I guess the options would be Kim Ki-hee or Stewart, right? Leo Burney is, I think, further down the depth chart right now. Anyway, he's coming off an injury. But that would be up to Schmetz, and I just think you look at, I wouldn't put it past Brian to make a decision to err on the side of the kid, because he's done it with Obed. Paul Rothrock's not a kid, but he gave him opportunities over more senior players or more experienced players. Georgie, the same thing. You know, a lot of it has to do with attitude. If you come into it with the right, he loves Kalani's attitude. So Stewart is a talented center back who I think has absolutely first team potential that probably needs, for the benefit of other center backs in our club who might have an opportunity to get into the second team. If Stewart's there just because we don't have an alternative for him, it is clogging things up a little bit. But he's still only 18.
Right.
He doesn't turn 19 until September. So I would caution anyone with, like, he's a center back. It takes time, but you have to play. That's, you know, you could say that about any position, but you're not going to put a center back in midfield or at wing or something. Like, you could get Sebastian Gomez, another 2006 Academy player signed to the second team. You could put him at either wing, a 10, or put him as a holder. I played him at fullback when he played for me in 2022. That might have been the beginning of 23. Just because he was talented, I want him on the field. You don't do that necessarily with a center back prospect or a first team player.
Right. Yeah. So on the other end of the spectrum of players that are playing for Defiance, you got Yu Sukanome, who is coming off a hat trick in 14 minutes. 14
minutes, yeah. I joked. I said 10 minutes to him this morning. I saw him, and his English, he's worked very hard at it. Last year was his first year with us, but he had done college in the U.S. So he had some, he had a good grasp of English, but he's now getting to the point where he understands sarcasm or the more subtle elements of normal discourse.
Ready to kickstart your fitness journey? Whether you're an athlete, a fitness enthusiast, or just getting back into shape, BodySpec has you covered. For less than the price of a haircut, you can access DEXA scans, the world's most accurate body composition scan. Right now, we're offering an exclusive $10 discount on single scans, which brings the price down to $50. Just visit the site bodyspec.com/sounderatheart and use the code SOUNDER at checkout. The scans only take about 10 minutes and you get results in less than an hour. This is the same type of technology that top athletes around the world use to keep track of things like muscle mass and bone density. These types of scans traditionally cost more than twice as much. Although there are brick and mortar locations around the Puget Sound, they also have mobile facilities that visit gyms across the region. Just visit bodyspec.com/sounderatheart to get more information.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Yeah, we're talking about Yu Sukanome. He is, he's an interesting player. He clearly has some abilities, but it also he's an older player who has a ceiling, presumably.
Yeah.
But this seems like it would be a big game for him.
Well, and you need it's impossible for any team at this level, and I don't care what if this is Division III, which is how it's designated by U.S. Soccer.
Yeah.
You go to third division in England, and you are going to have some players that are being looked at by Man City, and you're going to have some players that are 30 years old, and that's past.
Right.
You's not that old, and this is an opportunity, whether it's an opportunity to show to our first team staff that he can get goals in an environment like that, or an opportunity to show to Oakland Roots and all of their opponents that this is that's his future. I don't know, but a hat trick in 14 minutes or whatever it was, it stands out. And
it wasn't nice. It wasn't. I'm not totally up on the nomenclature of this, but I think it was both a natural and a perfect hat trick.
So it's
because it was
left foot head, and 3 in a row.
And 3 in a row, exactly. Yeah. See, I knew you'd be the guy that talked about it.
In Brazil, it has to happen in the first half to be a perfect hat trick.
Well, it happens in this first 14 minutes. Can that be?
Yeah. We have a few players in Defiance that people would not have heard of if they're not following that team, that are intriguing, that offer. I mean, people might know Pete Kingston just because he's local and Ballard and played for UW and Seattle U, and our academy. We all really like him. Pete is a very good player. He's getting opportunities in training with the first team. I'm not saying there's a future on the first team for him. It's not for any one person to say that here. But Pete is one that people would get excited about because, again, the perfect situation doesn't really exist. The perfect developmental situation. I would argue Obed Vargas, came in, signed, was in our academy briefly, pandemic's happening, signed with the second team in 21 as a 15-year-old, played in the USL Championship, turned 16 in August that year, signed with the first team the offseason of 21-22. Jean-Paul gets hurt, he gets a ton of opportunities, breaks his back, but, builds up to the point where suddenly there's a buzz about him. And that academy, second team, first team, fast succession. And then there's Jackson, maybe.
Right.
A 98, goes to college. We don't even draft him. Somebody else drafts him. They don't want him. Comes into our second team kind of through the back door, makes it the first team. Both are merited. Both have gotten where they are on merit. But, for us to say we know how Pete Kingston was going to evolve, Peter Kingston, in 2018, when he was part of the first championship, the DA U17 title, Chris Little coached. That was before he took the Defiance head coaching job. Pete was their linchpin in midfield, and Leo Burney was their center back. And there were O2s on that team. Alfonso Campo Chavez, Ethan Doubler was an O2 on that team. Josh Atencio. That's a good team. That was the DA. The next year they won the GA Cup, and so Kingston wasn't on that. He was an 01. Just missed that. But he was every bit as good as Atencio. We were looking at him like, oh, he's good. But didn't have there was something about the upside that, Josh maybe projected higher. And Josh isn't even a fair one to compare him to because they're not really the same position.
Right. Because Pete has been more of an attacking player, right?
Well, that's interesting.
Because he's been played for you.
At the college level, and Ballard, he was a wing.
Right.
We see, when I coached him in the academy briefly and Mike Morris coached him out, we see him deeper. 6, a fullback, someone that can create from deeper. But it's interesting that he trains with the first team, and Preki, one of the first things he said after the session was like, Kingston's all right. He should be playing on the wing, which is what Ethan O'Neill, the Ballard FC championship coach that is now coaching for our U15s, he's a wing. He's a proponent of Pete on the wing. So we have two camps, two schools of thought. But I'm just saying, Kingston and you. We have a goalkeeper. If it's not Jacob Castro playing, Lars Hellerin he's very good. Kaito Yamada, Vissel Kobe on loan. They don't have a second team And
he's like a U20 Japanese player, right?
He's 06. He's a national team for Japan. He's Stuart Hawkins' age. They're both 06s. They both play for their respective national teams in that age. And Kaito's been great. And so, and he's just learning the language. Unlike you, who went to college in America, Kaito he's not gone to college.
Right.
He's a kid. And so he is an on-loan Vissel Kobe player that they're trying to see if he's got a long-term future there or if they should let him go to college. And we'll see how that kind of works out by the end of the year. But there's a lot of those kind of players that are, whether it's 01 in Pete Kingston or 06.
A couple of young players I wanted to real quickly touch on. You mentioned Sebastian Gomez, Snyder Burnell, another player who has been with you for a few years now. But he's been wearing the captain's armband a few times this year. Central midfielder who I don't know what he projects best as yet, but he definitely seems like he's a player.
He is. Somewhere in midfield, maybe more of a Leyva, who seems to be tilting further up the field. 8-10, Snyder covers a ton of ground, good leadership, works very hard at training, serious and sober about his craft. He's one of those that works with Craig Dalrymple extensively. He's been to first team preseason now a couple times, so they take him with them when they go on their overseas stuff. They're getting comfortable with him. I don't know where he projects in terms of like making the jump to the first team, but he definitely is in that window of someone that we think is, Josh Atencio is an 02, Snyder's an 07, so he's 5 years younger, and if he, again, we're always looking to kind of just raise the floor. And I don't think Josh was the floor. But whoever is no longer with our club, our development system needs to put somebody in that's a little better than them at that age. Mm-hmm. And just the momentum of being a little better, being at a slightly more advanced position, that might get us to a point where, the floor suddenly becomes the key to the whole operation. Now, the ceiling needs to also keep going up.
Right.
We don't want to concertina the cake, right? Isn't that a thing? Isn't that?
Never heard that term, but I believe you.
Yeah, the bread, the accordion, where it squeezes together.
Okay.
Right? Rather than being fluffy and.
Yeah. Okay.
So raising the floor while supporting the ceiling to keep, that keeps going up as well. The rising tide. That Snyder is very much in that mold of like he could be, because every level we've put him at, he's just looked comfortable. It's usually a good sign. But first time he was training with the first team, I was like, I thought he might be a little too slow, couldn't get around the field, but suddenly he didn't look. Yeah, I no longer had those misgivings. Between Seba at 2006, Snyder at 2007, we have a couple. Edson Carley.
Well, that was another player, right?
2007.
Yeah, another player I wanted to talk about, who I've just become infatuated with a little bit, is Edson Carley, who is a player who I had never heard of before the season. In my mind, sort of burst onto the scene. He's got a couple goals for you guys. He has been routinely, if you watch the games, he is routinely just trying things that we are not used to seeing Sounders Academy players try, at least when they're playing with Defiance or higher. It's been remarkable to see him he's nutmegging through balls. He's, chipping the goalkeeper. He's, doing things that you just, again, like a level of creativity that I'm not used to seeing from. This is not the cookie cutter kind of player that you guys have kind of been known to produce. That's unfair.
I'm hoping that's not an insult.
No, it's not an insult. Yeah. I think the Academy has done a very good job of producing sort of hard-nosed guys who covered a lot of ground, who are good passers, but not necessarily creative passers, who can do a job, who are very good at doing the job, but not necessarily. There's never been a number 10 that you thought, oh, he's gonna.
The reference I would have would be like a Marlon Vargas. That's a more obscure name. Never signed for the first team. Signed for the second team. He's playing in the USL, New Mexico.
Yeah.
He's in New Mexico now, but he was at Colorado too after Defiance. Edson is similar to him in that he's capable of, as you say, he's capable of the unexpected. Like moments where your jaw will be open a little bit. Like I didn't see that coming. Marlon had that in him. It took Marlon a while to get it at the pro level, but people have to remember Marlon was playing when he was Edson's age in the USL Championship.
Right.
And he was Edson's age in 2018.
Oh.
I think so. It's that sort of distance, maybe 2019. So I didn't see Marlon doing it at that age. But again, like there's a degree of you gotta feel like you fit in, and Edson he seems chill. And I don't know if that's a left-footed thing. I don't know.
Right. There's something about left-footed guys that just seem like they're a little more relaxed.
It's all good, and he is like that. Hardworking, good student.
Shoreline High School, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
But just is.
I'm supposed to give that shout out. I think.
Well, there you go. But he's just calm. He's just. Which again surprised me when I first saw some of that in the academy back in August. But his ascent has been rapid. Within, he went from being solid 18 on the U18s to suddenly like training with Defiance, and then he got some training opportunities with the first team.
Mm-hmm. That's where I first saw him, I think.
And now he's getting opportunities to play for Defiance. He's scoring goals for them. It's happening so quickly that you have to continue to just check the brakes a little, that not anoint him as anything other than an interesting player who's still only a junior in high school, and will seed down the road what if it leads to something here. But he has the skill set to be a professional, just at what level? Right. His left foot is very good. For setting others up, for scoring himself. And he's a hard worker, and so those two things: left-footedness, a little bit of creativity, and something out of nothing quality,
right?
And hard work. That is
it's a good. Seems like a good.
It's a combination. A lot of coaches want to drink a bit of.
Yeah, I can imagine.
One part of each.
Well, Wade, I could probably keep you for another couple hours, but I think for both of our sakes, I should probably end this. But Wade, of course, thank you so much for doing this. You're always one of my favorite guests. Like I said, there's a million more things we could probably talk about, but thank you for doing this. And I really want to encourage people to go out to the Tacoma Defiance Open Cup game. It's on Tuesday against Oakland Roots. I think season ticket holders get a free ticket, and it might just be a donation at the door for the Rave Foundation. And Starfire games are always fun, and I would imagine this one will be a little bit more like a first team a game at Starfire. So anyway, thank you for doing this, Wade. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. I always look forward to it.
All right, I am Jeremiah Shan. This is Nos Arietes, and we will catch you next time.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party. You guys like that? No? Awkward joke, dad joke right there, huh?